the best runner out of all of us. I'll just have to admit
He was probably the fastest. Yeah.
Yeah. I still remember him running. I got to tell the story before I forget. John running like a 10K on base. And I set my cousin in there who is not a runner, but he did really good. But he ran and he said, man, that little Hispanic guy that's on your team, he's fast, man. He passed me up. And I remember John had beat him, but my cousin was running in high top shoes. I don't know if you ever remember him, Steve. I brought in my cousin a couple of times, right? For like drug training and stuff, because he was a drug dealer at one point. So we brought him in to do, but yeah, he had run out of his shoes. His shoe soles were busted after that run. And I just remember John Ramirez beat him. But anyway, so let's get to John Ramirez now. John, what are you doing and where are you at?
Okay, Dave. So after my retirement, we started a business. My wife and me, we set up a cleaning company here in the community.
Nice.
Then I divorced the business with my wife and set up another business for painting and remodeling. All right. It is not my calling, and because when I retire, my goal was to continue working with the church. So this is something new. Nobody knows. You guys will be the first one to know that we are going to initiate a trip to Dominican Republic. We have a calling to work over there. We will be now mentoring some leaders in the ministry. We are going to be teaching and currently working on a training program for leaders in the ministry, how to create the vision for the ministry, how to create leaders, how to train leaders, how to identify new leaders. And from there, most likely, we will be taking over a church. That's the plan that we have over there, if the Lord allow us to do it.
Wow. Man, that's a lot. So you said you divorced the business with your wife.
Yeah, we divorced the business. It's good, we need it, but I had an association with my brother-in-law. Now he's running the business because, again, the church demands time, and we see the need, especially when we have been interacting with other communities, other countries. We see the people who want to do the job, but they don't have the tools for the training. They don't have the experience that they need. And that's something that the Lord put us in our hearts to do. And based on a request from the Dominican Republic, we will be moving there soon.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to come back to that. So for all of you out there watching, so all four of us were connected in the Army. We were all in the military Army. We were stationed at Fort Bragg together, and we did all, we were all Army CID agents. Actually, Steve's still in. So, yeah, that's kind of our background. We did all criminal investigations together. George would come in and kind of join our crazy teams because he was a reserve guy. So he would come in and spend about, 2 weeks or so at a time, right?
Yeah, it was usually at least like a full weekend a month, right? Typical reserve duty. And then 2 weeks to a couple, even more weeks than that once a year.
Yeah, so George would come in and, man, and anytime he would come in, I'd say, look, I want him. Send him me. One, because our team, we had a lot of dang investigations. People don't realize how many, Army CID works, especially if you're former military. They really don't understand what we do. I talk to people all the time. I talk to past military people and now they're in real estate, and they're like, well, what did you guys really, you guys were like, just like spies or like, snitches or whatever. I'm like, no, man, and they're like, oh, I didn't know that. Like they just never knew. But so we did all of that in our time together, and that's how we knew each other. So we shared a lot of personal time together as CID agents, right? We're not really liked much in the military because everybody thinks we're out to get them. Right. So we really have to stay together. That's really what we have. And the bond I have with these guys is unbreakable. It's crazy. So, but that's how we met. So let's talk a little bit about CID, right? Like what kind of crazy cases, what do you guys remember us that's funny? Like I could think of 100 cases right now. Steve busting the easel and George tried to save
Can I have a cookie?
Yeah.
Too many.
Yeah, that was crazy. So that was a funny case.
I would like to tell the audience that I'm going to be, the one being bull here because I know a lot of stories will come towards or against me. but it's okay, guys.
Yeah.
You guys can start.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No,
Go ahead,
look,
Steve. Go ahead, Steve.
Wow.
listen, for John's cases, man, there was a lot, but I still remember you and Serrano driving all the way to Raleigh to meet a it's over now, John. We're good to meet a Russian wife that was flying in because we had Steve, you were part of that too, that investigation. Remember the Russian bride scandal that we ended up doing a joint investigation with ICE later, where it was like a huge ring, right? You had a bunch of New York, I think, was it New York recruiters?
Yeah.
That were involved, something like that. Go ahead. You guys share. You guys know a little bit more details probably than I do at that time.
Yeah. So basically I think it was Coney Island, if I'm not mistaken, a band of recruiters that, and then for those that don't know, in the military, we kind of shoot ourselves in the foot because we incentivize marriage to the point where a soldier, normally you come in, you live in the barracks if you're single, and the barracks is not a fun place to go. You've got tons of people around you. You have no privacy. So the Army says, you know what, we're going to pay you about $1,300 a month if you go get married and live off post, and you can have your own apartment, your own house. So there's a lot of ripe conditions for fraud, a lot of ripe conditions of, just people taking advantage of a system. So these recruiters in Coney Island, they knew there was a strip club that they had befriended the owner of. And they basically said, hey, I can get these Russian females into my club. The only thing is I can't keep them there because I can only get them a student visa, which only lasts so long. So they were telling these recruits, well, the Army guys were like, we can help you out there. We will basically have these new recruits marry these Russian brides. And then the Russian brides would stay in New York. The soldiers would go to their duty station, be provided BAH, get all the financial incentivization of being married per se. But the only thing is they weren't really married. They were married legally. They had a marriage certificate, but the only thing is it was done in a fraudulent way. The recruiters were getting financial kickbacks from the soldiers. So just a whole, once you kind of, on any investigation, once you start peeling back those layers of the onion, it just ballooned, and it became literally a nationwide investigation where RFAs were going out to every office. And that was the one that we got.
Yeah. Now I remember it was a hotline tip, and normally those were not so great. But yeah, I remember that one, and we're like, what is this? And somebody had said, hey, you may want to check this unit and all the spouses, because that was the funny thing too, right? Majority of those were in one unit that I remember, right? You guys would know probably more than me. You were doing ins and outs. So I was just kind of reviewing it and giving my guidance on some things. But I remember it was like, all these long names, and we're like, oh, that's like number 3 in the same unit. And then we're like, well, shit, there's 4 and 5. We're like, probably got to look at that. And then you guys got into it. And then John went and met the one soldier. We were on to him. And when we went in his house, right, you and Serrano went in his house and saw pictures with a different woman. And then he was saying, oh, well, yeah, I don't remember. Right. Something like that. Right. And then he called her, and then the real wife, the Russian, and then she was going to fly in and act like they've been together. And right, John. And we intercepted her at the airport.
Yeah. Actually, when we went down, Serrano did an excellent job on his observations. We were able to identify little things that caught our attention and allow us to identify what really was going on. Then the guy observed us, coordinated with other law enforcement just for, notification that we were in the area, and he thought that we had a huge operation against him. He gave back, come to the office. He confessed, and he admitted that she was on her way on a plane. So we need to take action, and we need to move fast.
Yeah. Yeah, you move fast, all right.
Yeah. I think we can go to the next case.
Yeah. Anyway, that was a good one. So I remember you guys bringing her in, and she was tough. I think she told me pretty much to F off, because I think we weren't getting anywhere with her. And then I went in there to try to, figure out, how I could get her to, and she basically was like, man, F off, basically. So I don't know. She was tough.
I think there were many cases where we work as a team, and that was the excellence of GC3, that we all have different skills, and we made the way to talk to different people in different ways. And not every time I was able to get a confession, but magically Steve will go there, get a confession, and now he thinks that he was the best, or Dave, But in general, that was a teamwork that made us look, I would not say better, but more confident in the eyes of our commanders.
Yeah. George, what do you think? What did you help us with that case at all, or no?
No, I just remember looking through the case with you, and you were like, we just when you came across the second and the third spouse, right? And all these were like very low enlisted in the unit, like within a year. Mm-hmm. So they had that one crony who was from New York that knew the guy who had the club, and he was like, I got a bunch of knuckleheads that are coming into the unit, and we'll just marry them off, and they'll see that. You come in making $1,000 a month, and now you're making twice that, as Steve was saying, almost 3 times that, and you get to live off post. They were like, oh my gosh, I'll marry Tatiana.
Right. Yeah.
Barely meet her, but I'll get kickbacks. And then I remember the club owner started to say, well, now because of issues I'm having, you need to pay me another $100. And then it was another $100. So I know the service members were starting to kind of feel a little like, now I'm trapped. Because I can't go to my commander and say I need help because what I'm doing is wrong.
Yeah.
I
can't believe it. See, George remembers all that. I don't remember the ins and outs that way. When you brought up the club owner, I'm like, damn, I don't even remember the club owner. But that was, so that was, we did that case. I remember we had big case we did was the one that they flew in Michael Bodden against, or however you want to pronounce his name, the famous pathologist on HBO, had his own show, the Brown case.
Case.
Was, a really good case we did. Steve almost killed me in that case, by the way.
That was the you had just come back from leave, and I had just shown up for my 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And Steve all the work, and we're like, we're gonna have to re-interview everybody. And we started building out a plan. And Steve, in his calm demeanor, basically ripped a laminate. Remember, he ripped a laminate off the desk. He was. And to this day, Steve, that was in 07, 08, 08, 09. To this day, I still use because I'm here treading water. I still use that line. and look, just to give a perspective to people.
Yeah, let me caveat. Hold on, I'm gonna let you go, Steve, because you got a lot on this one. I was really tough as a leader of our team, so I'm for sure these guys will probably obviously second that, but I rarely went on leave. And when I did, I really still wasn't on leave. I was crazy. I was crazy with the stuff. I was always in it. But it made me sharp. So I felt like that's the way. I don't know. I felt like if I wasn't sharp for you guys, I would fail you. So the only way for me to stay on it was always to stay on it. And that's why I didn't take much of leave. And I was crazy because even Steve and John, George too, but I would always see Steve and John because we were there day to day. They'd say, look, you got to go. You got to relax. You got to do family stuff. You got to do. And I was just like, I felt like if I wasn't always doing it, I would lose that edge. And I'm telling you, real estate, I'm similar, except I'm not like, we got to be here all night or, no. But so everybody out there know, like as a warrant officer and running a team, I was always, I told the team when I went on vacation, if something happens, you call me if something big happens. And because they had another warrant officer who I'm not going to mention was what took over. And I knew that while I was gone, I was worried a little bit there. So, just inexperience and things. And then they didn't call me. So when I got back, George had just joined in with the reserve and we were reviewing it. And we're like, damn, we got to bring these guys in again. And poor Steve, man, Steve and John, they were working their butts off for at least a couple days, maybe a week or so.
Yeah, it happened Friday night. We showed up Monday. Well, Friday night into Saturday morning.
Right.
So we show up Monday, all fresh and smelling really good. And
right. And I told Steve, I told the team, what was it? It was late, right? It was like 4 or 5 o'clock in the evening. And I said, we got to get these guys back in. And then George's like, well, let's get them. You know, we were all fresh. Me and George are fresh, like George said. And Steve's like, what do you mean get them? Like, get them today? Like, what? And then, you know, John's like, you know, John was always the one.
John was the chief. What do you want, chief? Chief,
yeah,
I got that, chief.
What do you want me to do? I'll call a helicopter. We fly in. We do that. And I was like, okay, we don't go that far. We just got to, you know, but, and then poor Steve was like,
John was, and I'm going to caveat, John was more than willing to volunteer other people's services as well, just to kind of follow that up. I love every person on this. I would take a bullet for any one of them, but holy cow, man, that case, I still talk about that case. I still bring it. You know, it was, I mean, it was at the end of the day, in my opinion, I believe justice was served for the victim. And I think, you know, while we joke about it and we talk about the stress and the angst, you know, deep down inside, I mean, we knew, I knew that had to be done. It's just a hard realization, you know, to come to, because, and I'm sure you see it in the real estate world. I mean, you get burnout, you get,
all the time.
I'm hitting, I'm going on stop. And in that particular case, we did. We got a call. I think it came in Saturday morning. And
early morning though, like what, like 2-3 in the morning or something, right? I'm thinking.
Yeah. It was early. And kind of long story short, you know, 7 soldiers out drinking, having a good time, you know, no nefarious intent at that time. And a soldier gets drunk, runs into the wood line, you know, trying to kind of get a little bit of emotional response. The soldiers are stuck in a position where, okay, do we leave the soldier in the woods or do we go get him? You
he was a big guy, by the way, too.
And he was big. I want to say
not like me and John, but
he was like 6'3", 6'4". He was really tall and he was really fast. He was athletic.
Yes. I mean,
he was an older guy that came in.
He was a tank, and the guys that went into him, you know, they had just come out of the combatives course. So every one of them thought they were Rambo. Every one of them thought they knew how to take this guy down. And ultimately, the end state was the kid, you know, was put in a rear naked chokehold at least 3 or 4 times, hog-tied, zip-tied, and crammed
in the back of that little escape. Remember, it was a little tiny vehicle. The
little as SUV. And at the end of the day, I mean, as criminal investigators with as much experience, I mean, we look at it, it's like, well, this is a clear-cut case of positional asphyxia, coupled with a large amount of intoxication from alcohol.
Huge amount.
It was a learning point for a lot of people. Our medical examiners, it was her very first case. Working a fatality that actually started off, we advised those soldiers for murder.
Sorry, Steve, you remember a little bit the leash. Campais has the duty call.
Oh, Campais did?
Yeah, he called me an hour after he got the call. Then when we start talking to the guy who has weaknesses, we had a little sense of something going on. When we come to meet and talk about what was going on, that I brought advice then about for murder. And you guys say, well, this is what we have based on what this guy is telling us. And then we have one individual telling us, you hit the nail in the head. Once we brought it, you know, worse than the person, but we helped him to put everything together. And that was a great case that we had to come back from Afghanistan to testify. Remember, Steve?
Yeah, I mean, me and John were both deployed, and I was in Mosul, Iraq. John had got shipped over, I think, to Afghanistan to set up that box office, you know, and or another office in Afghanistan. And then
the Major Crime Task Force.
Yeah, so I mean, it was they pulled us out. Initially, we had 7 individuals that were charged. I had 7, we had 7 court martials that were scheduled. And they were literally going to fly me back and forth between Iraq and the United States over the course of 3 months to testify. And thank the Lord, after they took the first one to court martial, the rest of them took plea agreements. So
I was in Korea then. They flew me back from Korea for that too. And that's when I got back there, all of us got flown in. We all had left Fort Bragg at the time, but Yeah. And then Michael Bodden came in there. He come walking past me. I was like, holy crap. Wow. That's crazy. So, and every time I see him on TV, I'm like, well, we beat him. So
we beat
because he was paid for by the other side,
Yeah.
I remember the prosecutor, whoever, I can't remember who it was, obviously, Steve, and you guys all have such a great memory and all that type stuff, but he did really well with kind of discrediting him. And because I got to see that testimony. And he did really well going after him. Like, how long did you look at it? How much were you paid? This and that. It was rough. I was like, ooh, man. So, but look, with all of the investigation, so let's get into a little bit of kind of mindset and things with you guys. Like, what do you think? I guess from an aspect of those who don't know or watching, like being an agent or law enforcement, especially a detective or federal agent. I mean, you're getting calls at all times of the day, birthdays, anniversaries, weekends, 2 a.m, 4 a.m. I mean, as soon as you get home at 6 p.m, you sit down to eat, and then boom, somebody died, or there's a bank robbery. You got to go. So what do you think from a perspective of us? How are we mentally able to just get through that day to day? You know what I mean? And how have you seen it different where you're at now? Do you see it way different with people you're dealing with now and different jobs? Now, Steve may not, because he's still kind of in the field, but tell me about that. How do you think we got through that day to day? Because I wonder sometimes.
I'll share just from, prior active service and then taking a break of time and then coming back in the reserve before I retired after 22 years. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you the reason I came into the reserve was, working in the corporate world after leaving my active duty time. Mm-hmm. There was just a hole. There was just an area I couldn't fill, and I was just missing that. I'll just say the camaraderie of people who kind of get. You can meet a service member wearing any uniform, even the Space Force, which I'm still trying to figure that out.
Yes.
But you meet anyone who's wearing the uniform, and within a few minutes they can finish your sentence because they understand the stress of however you entered, basic boot camp, regardless. They understand living in austere environments. They understand the hurry up and wait. They get that whole concept of sacrifice. You want people to your left and to your right know that you've got your position and that they're going to eat before you eat, right? And then as you advance in the career, you're cold, but your soldiers are warm, right? They're fed and you go hungry. All that level of sacrifice, exiting the military and going into the civilian life, I didn't have that. I met great people that were knowledgeable in their field, but there's a point to where someone who has not served will kind of end the conversation or will end that level of service or commitment to you. It's just, there's no other way to put it. So joining the reserve and then, being able to start working with these knuckleheads beginning in 2007, that's 2007. It's like 16 years.
Crazy.
I'm still 28 in my head. I don't know where those years happened.
Me too. Until I took a run this morning, I realized
understanding that, right? Understanding that level of commitment. There isn't. I don't know of any one of you or anyone else that we worked with in our time in the military where the answer was no.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You just don't hear that.
Yeah, I think right from our perspective, I don't think it ever crossed our mind that we weren't going to do the very best at everything we did. That's another thing, right? Like still to this day, I even my kids, and I know all of us have our fathers here, which is, I think, the best thing ever in the world is being a father or parent, right? So, even with my kids, I don't try to do things just to be average. You want to try to do it the very best you can. And you're not always going to be the very best at what you're doing.
Right.
That should be the goal. Do it the best. And I think all of us every day, right, we really affected a lot of people's lives in one way or the other, right? Yeah. For the good and the bad. And and then our lives really took second fiddle. I mean, it really did. So how do we deal with that? But on the civilian side, it's a little lacking now. Like, how did you deal with all of our caseload and work and family life? John and Steve, what do you guys
Hey,
think?
if Steve allow me to say, Steve,
Go
sorry.
ahead. Go ahead.
I want to answer with your own words, Steve, Dave.
Yeah.
You put something in your book.
Yeah.
Okay.
I love it. That's right. That's a good promotion right there. I like you, John. He's my favorite.
The strong mindset set us apart from other people, but it's the foundation that we have and the passion for the job.
Mm-hmm.
For anybody to reach not anybody, but a great number of agents to reach the level where we were at that time is because you had a passion, and behind that passion you had the discipline.
Yeah.
You know, you always want to do your best, as you say, but the foundation comes thanks to the training and the leadership that we obtain from people like, just the fact that we are sitting here talking with you is a huge reflection of the leadership that you have. How well we did, how well we worked together, and how connected we stayed. So handling the cases were not always easy, but first we think we had the right mindset. We set up the individual goals, but we also had team goals. We were a dedicated team, and we knew the concept of a team, but we applied the concept of the team. We work as a team. We stay together all the time, regardless of small differences, regardless of my accent, my language, my different things that happen between us.
Steve's good looks. Yeah.
Sometimes Dave demanding on a staff that could wait, but we understood all that. We stood strong as a team. We work together. We communicate, and that were things that allow us to move on to achieve what we were doing. And something important also that many people do not understand in the civilian side is the importance of a leader standing for his or her people. And that's something that any one of us here, all four as leader, we always did. We were there standing, for those people working under us or for us, like little things like people saying that we did something wrong, and you standing in front of the commander before he approached us to see what was going to happen, clear the environment. All that made so much cohesion that allow us to push harder and harder every time, because we work extended hours. We work so many cases. I remember many leaders coming to you and saying, "Hey, Dave, I need you to work this case," and you say, "We are not the duty team." "Yeah, I know, but we know you take care of this." I remember. I'm not going to mention Mr. Zimmerman, but he did it.
Yeah, Zimmerman was a leader. But I got along with Zimmerman, and he'll see this probably. He's on my Facebook.
I'll tell you, I missed Mr. Z. I have a question though. John, you said Steve talks a lot. I digress. Keep going. Go ahead, Dave. Take over again.
Steve, all right, yeah. So, Steve, what do you think? How did you get through it too? Like, John hit a lot of great points, right? I know we were trained, to do our job, but it's still different. And then George brought up, a lot of almost like esprit de corps, and John did too. We felt like there was a higher calling for us together. Like we were committed to something that was bigger than us, right? Yeah. And I think I never thought of it that way, but it just we were instilled to do that, right? So what do you think on that? Yeah.
I think, if you just looked at the dichotomy of that, what happened in our office at the time, I'm a humble guy, but I'm not ashamed to say, like, we were the A team. Mr. Frost team, we were the first ones called out. If something major hit the fan, we were the first ones out the door. Yeah. We solved so many of our cases that we came. And I really think it really comes down to unity of purpose. We worked so well together, and as much as I tease John, I love John Ramirez to death. I love Jorge Resende to death. I love Dave Frost. there's a reason why I still talk to you guys from, 2007 on, simply because, when you have a team where, we use these Army buzzwords like embrace the suck, and we embrace the suck together.
Yeah.
So we were sitting in the foxholes together. It wasn't like Dave was, we had so many leaders in that office at the time that were trying to triage cases from their phones sitting in bed. Whereas I had a leader, Dave, that was there with us. That was, while I was up at 3 a.m. doing an interview, Dave was right down the hallway, not, opening the case file, doing what he could to help out, leading on the cases. John was there, and God bless Jorge Resende, because Jorge, you missed your calling as a therapist, my friend. My blood pressure and my heart owes so much to you on your ability to walk me off the ledge. I am. I mean,
yes.
That's why I migrated and I was gravitated towards Dave's leadership, was because I can't tell you how many times, growing up playing football and playing sports, I love those kind of leaders.
Yeah.
Rah, rah. I remember Dave doing dips in the chair, firing me up, and I felt like I was inside the locker room, at halftime again. It got me going. So right when I'd feel like I was tapped out and my energy, I just couldn't do anymore, I'd look around, and there were my leaders and my partners right there with me. And it really just picks you up. It gives you energy that you didn't think you had, and it allows you to push just that little bit further than what you would have done if you're out there by yourself. So that's really my only thing.
I think, look, Steve had a lot of great points. We were a great team. I loved our team. And even when we got separated based on just PCSs, or we came back, or they moved our team, there was cases where I think for sure Steve was still there, where I asked the other team leader, I said, I need Steve. I had a different team at that time, and things were going on. I think we had a death, and then we had a drive-by shooting, which was crazy on post, within like 2 days of each other. And I was like, oh my God, we were a duty team. And I was like, I need Steve. Did you work on that drive-by, Steve? You did, didn't you? That's right, right?
Yeah. Sessions.
We did, yeah. Oh man, that was a good case. But we worked the crap out of that. I mean, we were working for probably 4 straight days, just with all those different cases. But it just goes to show that, as much as they talk great about the team or even my leadership, I mean, I couldn't have done anything without these guys, and just the same thing, right? The mentality and the teamwork, and we just pushed through things that were that most people don't, and can. Even when I became a real estate agent and then started a team, I thought I was going to get the Georges, the Johns, the Steves. And then what I got was good people, but just, the intangibles, which you can't teach, right? I can't teach the rah-rah. I can't teach I always say you got to have batteries included. And I think back of you guys, all of you always came to work with batteries included. And there were times where all of us were down and tired. And sometimes George would come in and be our counselor, right? He would say, look, guys, the way we've got to look at this, right? Like he'd have that soft tone, right? And then I'd be like,
chugging a Red Bull, right?
Yeah, then I'd be drinking Red Bull. Then I'd say, sounds good. I need a Red Bull, George. Yeah, whatever. Right. But seriously, we every once in a while we had to put a battery in one of us here and there. Probably not John as much. I think John was pretty much always moving, but in real estate or even civilian business, right? I run some businesses here I have a good group now, and I've had individual groups or individual people that were good, but the majority are very mentally defeated, right? Emotionally, they just, somebody hangs up on them. Somebody says, I'm not listing my house. Like it will defeat them. I mean, drastically, right? Or you're to deal with an agent and they're calling. So I think a house is burning down when they're like, hey, do we have the signature on this document? I mean, this is crazy. I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, I'm like, that document isn't even required for another 2 weeks. Like, I'm not all crazy over here. Like, but that's the norm. So it's hard to get the intangibles that each of you had. It's really weird. Now that's what I look for when I interview agents. I'm like, I'm worried. I'm looking at work ethic. I'm looking at motivation. What's driving them? What is their bigger picture of where they want to be, where they want to go? So that's something how I look at it. Now, what I always give the example of this is what separates the 18-year-old kid, right? That's in combat. We've all been there. We've all been deployed into crazy areas. Every one of us, right? What separates the 18-year-old kid getting shot at and seeing his buddies get shot and continuously doing a mission that may be to just clear a building, right? In somebody else's aspects, like, well, hell with that, clearing a building, who gives a shit? We're going to go back out. We're getting shot at. I'm out of here. What's the difference between that kid in the military versus civilian? What's the difference there? Why don't we get the above and?
Well, I think if you don't mind, guys, I'll chime in real quick because I got a story on both sides of this.
Yeah.
Because I feel like the 18-year-old kid, a lot of people join the military for various reasons, whether it's paying for college, whether it's patriotic duty, whether this is what my family's always done. But I feel like they're looking for a sense of belonging. They're looking for a sense of structure. And while a lot of us, you always hear stories, and there's a ton of TikTok videos out there of the lunacy of what the Army does. But, I was looking through my Facebook the other day, and I don't really pay attention too much to it, but I noticed out of the 600 friends I've collected my Facebook journey, the ones that always comment on my posts, whether it's military, civilian, whatever, or my kids, are my military friends. There are people that maybe I haven't even seen them for 15 years, but they still remembered me being part of them. And it's that unity of purpose. And what really bothers me here is a case example dealing on the civilian side. We have security officers that work the front gate at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, and they get paid about, $51,000. So not a ton of money, but for Brunswick, Georgia.
I was going to say.
And it bothers me because the higher ups, sometimes you don't always get the highest quality people in those positions. And people continuously in leadership positions say, well, you get what you pay for. And it drives me nuts. It's nails on a chalkboard to me because I'm like, listen, these are grown adults. Like these are 25, 30-year-old grown adults. And an 18-year-old private in the Army is basically making borderline welfare wages. And I would take an 18-year-old private over some of these security officers that we hire in because they fall back on that excuse of, well, we're not paying them that much, so really we're not going to get that good of quality. You know, and for a military mindset to think that, we have privates that are going overseas, putting their life on the line in combat zones, and we're paying them $20,000 less than what we're paying this guy to stand at a gate. And and just to give you perspective, FLETC has not had a ASO or security officer pull their weapon and discharge a weapon in 20 plus years. So, I don't like the excuse people say of like, oh, well, I don't care what you do. Whatever you do, whatever you're being paid, you do it with pride. You do it to the best of your abilities. Just because you may not be in a higher paying position doesn't mean you have to go in and say, well, this is what you're paying me, so this is what you're going to get. And you don't really see that in the military as much as I've seen on the civilian side so far.
Yeah. So George, let me phrase this for what Steve said is, here's what I hear people saying. But George, you chose that life. You chose the military. So, I didn't. So you have to do certain things in the military. Like Steve was mentioning, right? Because I've heard that. That's why I say it. I've heard it. And I'm like, oh, well, here we go. You got me going now. So then I'd be like, so how do you deal with that when people say, hey, look, well, the military is a different life, right? You choose to be there. You volunteer, you go. So you kind of have to do that. I'm a civilian. I don't have to do that, and I don't have to think that way.
It comes down to the expectation you have for yourself and the expectation you have with those around you. And raising kids, like you said, we're all dads, and we're grateful that marrying up, right? Because our wives make us look great. But you have, when you're raising kids, you use that, high level of expectation, but high level of acceptance, right? Because they have to know that they're whoever they are, right? That's the best that they are, right? But in working with staff or working with team members, it's that expectation of, is that the best you can do? Like right there. And then the moment you start getting but look at so-and-so and look and so-and-so, it's like, stop. When you wake up in the morning, do you literally look at yourself and say, I'm going to give about 78% today. My boss, my team is going to get 78% of George. That's it. I'm maxed out at 78%. Or do you say, I don't care what it is, whether I'm meeting the president or I'm sweeping the bathroom floor, whatever I'm doing, that's going to be the best job I can do.
Right.
And that's what the military instills in you. It really does. There isn't the whole joke of, well, it's good enough for government work and the building's like leaning this way. That can't transpond in the military, because at the end of the day, who else is trained for life and death situations?
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what, Steve brought up a good point too. Or maybe it was John. I can't remember. One of you two did, about our team. And I remember just, we had our duty bags ready. I remember when I first became a CID agent, I had an agent tell me, you're only wearing your gun because you're new. He never took his gun anywhere. I went on an RFA, which is a request for assistance for everybody out there, to Hazard, Kentucky. I still remember. And we were interviewing, a bad guy out there and traveling around, and he never had his gun. And he said, you were not going to wear that. I said, well, where is your gun? He's like, oh, it's in the trunk, I think. I'm like, what? What them shitheads to fan, man? Like, what? I mean, I'd much rather have it on me and not need it than need it and not have it on. Like, so I always was that way. And all of you were that, we all were that way. So I think that set us apart too, is just kind of preparing yourself for the worst case scenario. And if you need it, it's like what I always say to my kids, right? If it's going to rain or whatever, I'm like, well, we'll take an umbrella. Well, it's not raining now, Dad. Yeah, but if it does rain, at least we're prepared, right? If it doesn't, great. We don't need the damn thing. But hey, guess what? We've got it if we need it, right? So I think that still goes into civilian life as well. And I think, I think everything that when you sit back and look at what we've been trained to do and the things that we've been through and accomplished, and I think it's helped us each, right, going into a different life of civilian world. I think that was, for me going in real estate and business, it set me apart. I mean, it was easy for me to sit next to somebody who didn't have what, like, for instance, like rapport building, like that's a big deal for real estate. And they have no idea. I come in, I'm like, well, I'll just door knock it. And they're like, you're like, just going to walk up to the door? I'm like, well, yeah. But then I think, well, see, they don't see that. We had to do canvas interviews. We had to do, you know what I mean? Like we would do the whole block of people. Hey man, hey, you know anything over here? People weren't happy, but a lot of things I think that we've been trained to do. I'll tell you right now, I didn't realize how much I knew and what was so valuable to the real world, right? Outside of the military. Because we did, all of us have done so many investigation interviews and crime scenes, even photographs, all that, right? That you really think, well, yeah, but that's our job, but when you leave to go into the civilian world, all these people don't have those experiences. And you guys each bring so much to the table that maybe I don't think you realize. Maybe, John's probably realizing, George, obviously, but Steve hasn't realized it yet. I mean, I think he knows it, but ultimately, most people are just in awe. Like they have no idea, of what we can bring. So I was asked a question a couple of weeks ago. I was on a podcast, a big major real estate podcast. And they're like, your story is so different. Obviously, being an investigator and working bank robberies, war crimes, and running drug teams and general crimes teams, it's a lot different than the majority of people. So He said, look, you really big on mindset, consistency, discipline, like John had mentioned, right? He's like, how does one get that if it's never been instilled in them? Like military's instilled in us, right? Like even for PT tests, I remember all of you, we never just did the minimum. Right. We always were trying to push to do the very best. John would run extra 2 miles to try to get more points. I don't know, because he could beat half of us doing that still, which damn him. But I mean, we all did that, right? I remember people coming to me like, well, you just maxed the push-ups. Why did you try to get to 100? I'm like, because I wanted to get there. I wanted to push myself. Like I just did. And then of course, in the back of my mind, I thought, well, if Camp Ice was a PT stud too. So I can't, he beat the crap out of me. So, but I wanted for newer agents, I wanted them to see like, well, he's going the extra. Then I'm going to do that. Right. So in my mind, I always thought that, right. Same thing with the edge. I didn't want to lose the edge and stuff for the team. But ultimately, how does one get the mindset that we have? How can we get that to them? How could they do that? What do you guys think? John, what do you think? You're on mute, by the way. You muted yourself. What do you think, John? We haven't heard from you a bit.
There is a lot that we can do, but at the same time, it's not too much. I'm not contradicting myself with this answer. It's a lot that we do with the example that we give to people. As you say, we as leaders never conform with the minimum. We go above the standards. We need to walk the extra mile for our people. We need to demonstrate, and that was part of me. I will never ask somebody to do something that I never have done it. And when I need to ask somebody to do something I never have done it, I will participate. I will not delegate. I will participate. Why? Because I want to have that, moral conscience, freedom to know I never demand anybody to do something that I never have done. And I can demand or I can ask to certain standards because I know how to do it and do it in the right way. So when we live by the example, we are allowing people not only to see the way, but to transmit it. Let me say, like a disease that get transmitted to them, contagious, that is transferred to them. But it's not too much that we can do when people they don't want to do it, when people they don't have that sense of ownership or willingness to achieve. And that's a huge problem when you mention about today's 18 years old. A lot of people think that they deserve a lot. A lot of people think that it has to be given to them regardless, but life is not about that. When we want to do something, when we want to succeed, we need to work hard. We need, to do extra. I was a natural runner, but I was never happy just running with the battalion. I will go and do my 6-8 extra miles sometime before PT. I remember, and this is something that I really want to put it in my book when it comes out, my disappointment when I get my CID interview, because I was interviewed by an intern, not by the people that was supposed to interview me. But the response was, Ramirez doesn't speak English at the level that we would love to have, but he has the passion and the desire. We can teach him in English. They were not too successful on that, but we cannot teach or inject passion on people.
Right.
That's right.
When people want to get to the level that you are, Dave, or some other people have achieved, they need to have a, self-evaluation, self-assessment. What am I doing? How am I doing? And instead of criticizing or saying Dave is there because he's just lucky, because A, B, or C, we never know, what kind of shoes you had to wear. How did you have to walk? At what pace? And that's a huge problem that we have in our society today. In the civilian business, sometimes, I deal with real estate agents when somebody needs to make some modification on the house and all that. I see other people around, and sometimes I ask myself, how can you be doing this? How you don't see how unprofessional you are? You don't build rapport. You don't know how to talk to people. You show up late, different things. And that's a mindset that we create not only from a young age, but from the beginning of our military career.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So George, you run teams now, and you have
Yeah.
civilians. Like John had a lot of good points. So how do you instill that in your guys now, or girls? Your team
Sure.
of, to do the best they can. Go above and beyond. Like how does that work for you?
I like that. Sure, Dave. I like that John mentioned you have to do a self-assessment. And if you think about it, every person has 3 pillars, right? That kind of keeps them going: spiritual, physical, and mental. You have to feed those every day. Again, we can, and even in the corporate world, I do stress to people that you need to have some sort of higher purpose, right? Military, it's easy because you have that mission, and sometimes the mission is so broad that you just focus on the people to your left and to your right. And if I complete my portion, then the mission's done. But from a personal perspective, when you're talking to someone, it's where do you want to go and how do you want to get there? But what are you doing every day, spiritually, physically, and mentally? How are you broadening yourself? Have you signed up for Harvard Business Review, right? Couple minutes a day, about 15, 20 minutes. It gives you multiple subjects. I'm not a genius, but it expands my mind on different things. What books am I reading now, right? You should be thinking about 1 book a week. What are you reading? What are you doing to grow? From a physical perspective, how are you going to keep yourself healthy? Even if it's from a perspective of, I'm just going to give longer than you out of spite. I love that line. Even if it's just to outlive everyone else that you don't like. I don't care what your motivation is. What are you going to do to just remain healthy? And then from a spiritual perspective, how are you filling your bucket, right? What are you doing to make sure that you understand what it is to be a good person on the planet, treat the planet right, and treat others right, whatever that is for you. But those 3 elements really build the core of the person. So start with where you are now and then figure out where you want to go. And if you don't know, then you need to sit down with someone that's doing something that you want to do and say, how did you get there?
Yeah. Yeah. So that brings me to a point for you, Steve, right? Like how big do you think a mentor or a coach or I want to tell everybody too, Steve got me to get back in shape, damn it. And I was going to say a bad word. I jacked that all up. And I got off of that, and man, I gained it all back and then some. So Steve helped me lose like 13 pounds or 12 pounds in 1 month. Are you still doing that, Steve? You doing that stuff?
You can see, no, I'm not. I ran out.
All right. Well,
going through retirement, you just kind of had poison. So transitionary period where you're going into that next career, that was it was a lot of fun. I love doing it, but it just took me down another road. That it just, when you've got 2 kids doing club soccer and I'm traveling all over the Southeast region, it was tough, and
water.
Yeah, it's just one of those things.
All right, George.
I've always kind of been one of those people. If you can't give yourself 100% to something else, then the way my mentality is, I can't do it. If I can't give you 100% of me, then I'm not going to do it. And I just found I was very successful. I had a lot of fun doing it. And then it just got to a point where it spread to where, I had 25, 30 clients and every one of them was losing weight. But it was just difficult because then it's just like 30 people where you got to keep, all 30 of those people motivated. And when it's hard to, get your own family motivated, let alone 30 other people. And some of those people started becoming, how it kind of plays into the real estate world is the people like yourself and my close friends. I had a vested interest in those people. Once it started branching out into people I didn't know, it's hard because I didn't have anything to fall back on. If I don't really truly know this person. It's a friend of a friend who wants to lose weight, do a program, but I don't have that emotional connection, But yeah, I mean that's really
now,
all I have to.
Now on I appreciated that too, man. I got to get back to that again. I really do. More of just like George. I mean, George hit it right on the head. I mean, we'll do a couple more minutes and we'll get out of here, guys. But the mind, the spirit, right, and the body. I mean, it is. People don't realize, again, that's something the military teaches you: physical fitness, take care of yourself, right? Mentally, they break us down, build us back up, right? And spiritually, I think that's more of individual, I guess, in the military piece of things. John had a lot of that in his time, and obviously I think it helped his success too. But ultimately I agree. And I think that those who don't have the passion that we do, like Steve just mentioned, right? Just if you're not going to go 100%, then he feels like he's failing. So he's not.
If you're not fully in it, then get out.
Get out. Right.
You only have so much time. Yeah.
Right. So you only have many, I learned this from another coach. He was like, think about it. If you're 75 years old, I don't do the math. Steve probably would do the math fast. He's pretty good at stuff. But how many days does that equal for your life?
Yeah.
And man, I looked at that. I'm like, if the average male is living to 75, I'm 48, man. I've got, thousands of days left. Like, I'm like, holy crap. Like, when you really start putting things like that, I was like, ugh. So, I think finding a good mentor or coach or leader is very important, for whatever you're looking to do. And you mentioned it too, George, of like, if you want to do something, like if I wanted to be a really great runner in the military, I wouldn't have picked somebody who wasn't a great runner. I would have went for John, right? Like, I would have said, hey, John, what are you doing?
Hey, can I interrupt you for a second?
Yeah, please.
That is key here. And you use two expressions that people kind of get confused with, or they don't give the proper meaning. It's about a leader and a coach. Okay. Few days ago, I had a conversation with somebody, church, and he say, I don't have nobody to coach me. I say, stop. Mm-hmm. You have the leaders there. Many people can be a leader. I will not say everybody, because there are some people that cannot lead their way to the bathroom. Believe me, they got problems.
Yeah, absolutely.
But let's say 90% of people, they are leaders. And you will give them a task, and they will move a team to complete that task. Mm-hmm. But we see the leader, we learn from the leader. But when I want to be like somebody, I want to be better, that's when I had a individual responsibility to identify who is my coach. Who do I want to coach me? And as you say, you don't want somebody to coach you on running, somebody who can barely walk. You want to have somebody who knows about this, who has shown you and who has achieved big. But the people are now putting that together, that in order for me to be successful, I can just look at my leader and follow my leader. I need to identify a coach, somebody who can mentor me, who can lead me in the proper path, somebody who will not afraid to tell me things on my face, what am I doing wrong and how am I going to improve. And that's another thing. When we want to be coaches, when we want to be mentored, we have to be willing to accept reality, the truth, no sugarcoat. Whatever comes, I take it with love because it's for my own benefit. But when you tell reality to people, you tell the truth to people, they get offended. Or you cross the line, you offend me, or you hurt my feelings. This is not about hurting feelings. It's about what you want to do, how you want to do it. If you want me to help you, this is the way how I'm going to help you.
Yeah. No, I think you brought up a great point, John, of being coachable.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that when I talk to, business professionals, real estate, it doesn't matter who it is. I always say, look, I think one of my biggest strengths, I have a lot of weaknesses, but a biggest strength is I'm coachable. Like, I'll listen. I'm always listening to somebody else, and I want to learn. I'm trying to learn still every day. So I think that is key. You're right. You got to be coachable too. If somebody, I'm sure Steve's kids are going to be soccer stars, going to be the next Messi and what's his name? What's the Hispanic guy? Tall, good-looking dude. Ronaldo.
We don't like him. We don't like him.
We don't like him. Yeah, he's good looking.
When he said a tall guy, I thought he was talking about me.
But that, Steve's kids are coached, and I'm sure, although us parents I help Coach Reagan with softball because I can play that pretty well. But ultimately, I never would try to coach her on soccer. I mean, I don't know it. So everybody, you've got to find a good mentor and coach, and I agree. You've got to just be coachable and fall in there, right, of what they're coaching, and be able to take that self-assessment of, improving, right? So last question for you guys, and I'll let you go because you guys are busy. So what are you guys doing now Steve doesn't count. Steve doesn't really count because he's now instructing. But what are you guys doing now to improve yourself daily? Like, to keep getting better. What are some good things that you can share with people of like, what can somebody do to keep getting better? Obviously, be coachable is what number one. But
yeah,
what do you got? What do you think, John and George? Steve too.
What did John say? He
I
quit?
would like to hear your response first because you say something before that I'm going to use, as a tool.
Go ahead, say it. What was it? What do you got?
The problem is we get into the comfort zone. So I had too much to do, to be honest with you. This is, of course, in Spanish, is leadership for the minister and the model. George is able to understand all this. This is another project that I'm working because I had a men's conference in a few days, but I'm attending some conferences. Actually, last night, I signed up for another training that is going to give me 1 year membership to gain access to senior leaders that will allow me to learn from them. They will mentor me. Right now, my goal is to continue with my master's in theology because, if you allow me to be a little bit spiritual, is the calling is there. The Lord will give me the wisdom, but I need to learn a little more in order to be able to lead the people that He's going to put in front of me. Because we cannot be, in a biblical term, we are like jars. We are like device that God used to fill in, to later on we pour that knowledge into other people. We pour the word of God to other people. And in order for me to be able or capable to do it, I need to start feeding myself. In order to train leaders, I need to train myself even more because I'm not happy with what I have right now. I want more. This here is for the trainers training that I have recently that we attend in Tennessee with the Church of God. So that's what I'm doing right now, trying to get better, working with my wife shoulder to shoulder for the upcoming mission that we had in Dominican Republic.
Good. George and Steve, what do you got?
Good, Dave. Good, Steve.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, really, in the field of law enforcement, as you know, Dave, it's constantly evolving. I know, even though I'm instructing it, I find myself learning from students. I find myself learning from, agents and instructors that have been doing this for 20, 30 years. And then you learn from up and down. I think the biggest thing is going into any scenario with a sense of humility. If you walk, any person you talk to, if you're not walking away with a little bit more knowledge of something, of a topic, well, then you're doing a disservice, in my opinion. I think we get so focused on, well, I must talk to this, a person above me because nobody below me knows exactly what's going on. And I can imagine the field of real estate. That's got to be the same kind of situation. If you're only focused on realtors that have been doing this for 30 years, they may not be in tune with the current events.
Right.
Young, I know the younger generation gets a bad rap, right now. I know we talk about them, they're mentally weak or they struggle on everything. Like these kids, I'm telling you, are smart. When I have an issue, I hand my phone to my 14-year-old, and generally whatever issue I had is now gone. So I know there's always new ideas. Don't be afraid to, as leaders, I think we always feel like we have to have the answer. If we don't have the answer, then we're not a good leader because we don't know the answer to that question. And at the end of the day, be humble enough to know that, this is a way. This may not necessarily be the way. And if this way is better and we find it through, there's various law enforcement techniques that we develop, based on a student that says, hey, have we ever thought about doing it this way? And I mean, I've seen it firsthand, literally SOPs and procedures being rewritten because a student came in with a good idea, so being willing to kind of swallow your pride, have a little bit of humility and look above and below for growth, potential, and opportunities.
Yeah.
Man, that's great. I want to chime in real quick, George, then you, man. Steve, man, that was a lot of good. Both you and John both have a lot that you put on a table there. So I think going into, so you guys know as well, as when I came into real estate, there was ways that they did certain things. What I teach now, my team, is law enforcement techniques, right? Because the biggest thing for us is to find a client. If we don't have clients coming in, you got to go find them. So now I teach them how to find them. One is, we skip trace. We do certain things. We rapport build, we door knock, like we find off market, we drive neighborhoods, see, look, run down houses, then we skip trace the number, call them. Things that we incorporated in real estate was never being done. At least I never was taught it at all. And I just kind of adapted law enforcement techniques with it. And it's worked really well for me and my team, obviously, and a lot of team members that I've had come through my team. But you're right. Like, you can't be stuck on a certain way all the time. And you're right. Leaders, we're all leaders. We don't know it all. We're going to need, we're going to learn too. The great leaders, though, are all about adapting and wanting to learn that and being able to say, you know what, Steve, that's a better idea. Yeah, we're going to go with that. I mean, I totally think, and I think that's another thing we were all good at. Maybe I was a little rougher on it, certain points being probably the team lead, but ultimately I think we really did well together of like brainstorming, like, Steve, what do you think we should do here? And you guys are so good. John always just wanted to arrest everybody, which, which was basically we ended up doing, but, but ultimately, no, I'm just joking. But ultimately, we really did brainstorm and just adapt and figure that out. And Aaron, can you guys see the comments?
No.
Oh, you can't? I wonder how I thought I could post them. But, well, one of my team members wrote in here. She's,
oh, yeah.
You can see them? If you go over, she says, yes, don't get so caught up in your ego that you miss out on growth and new knowledge. Right. So, yeah.
Right.
But go ahead, George. So talk about, a little bit of what they honed in on there. Yeah.
No, I'll just tell you, I think it was, I'll start with Steve and I'll go to John. The idea that the answers are usually in the room. And, we shouldn't be thinking just because we're the team lead or the leader that we have the answer. It's best to kind of come up with what the problem statement is and then bring in the right people to figure that out. Dave, you were very good at brainstorming with the team. It was usually, this is the problem and what is it that we need to do to solve it. People usually will follow something if they have a little bit of skin in the game in regards to, I help with that solution. So I kind of believe in it more than the leader saying, this is how we're going to do it and why. Mm-hmm. To John's credit about, really expanding what your base is, because if you were born and raised in Central Florida, that's all how people live and how people interact there. The moment you leave Central Florida and go live in, Southern Georgia, or you go live in Southern California, it expands on what you understand of how people live and how they relate and what goes on. You have to continuously be feeding that muscle. So as John was like, I'm reading some books, I'm going to some seminars. Not everything will always work. You won't always get something out of a book. But if you stop trying to learn, then you're only going to be as good as where you are now. And I love the phrase, what got you here won't get you there. Right. So make sure you are looking for people that have been in the business for a while. Look at those people that are just, the diamond levels, right? People that are just crushing it and millions and hundreds of $1 million a year of real estate, and say, how did you start? Because I know you just didn't walk into that. Mm-hmm. So how did you go from where I am to where you are? And what steps would you recommend?
Yeah. Excellent points. So what I take from that too is get in the room with those who are above your level, but also go into what Steve said. Just because they're not above your level doesn't mean they can't teach you something. But, you want to make sure that you're not resorting to everybody who is doing the minimum, right? So I don't think Steve means that at all. I mean, like, yeah, but he definitely, I get what Steve is saying is like, even though they may not be at your level, they still could teach you something. but you don't want to be in the room with mediocre people unless you want to be a go-getter or achiever, right? So the biggest thing that I've learned in years in business now is I try to get in the room with those where I want to be. Yeah. And then it helps me get there because now I learn how to get there quicker as well. So I think that's great points you brought up, George. And I want to show you here is what is my one team? She said, let me see. Here's what she said. He's upgraded. So I've upgraded to Red Bull Infusion. So they get a little strawberry syrup in there and then ice.
Man, you're getting weak in your old age. What's up with that?
I gotta have some extra sugar in there. So that's what I'm drinking a lot now. But my wife put in there. Yeah, he still needs Red Bull. I still drink some, not as much. Well, I probably do, but sugar free now. I'm trying to get on healthy. I don't want to have a heart attack.
There you go.
Yeah. So, all right. Anything else you guys want to add before we get off? Because it's already 1:20, and I know you guys.
I'll tell you. I think there's plenty more that we can come up with in regards to the subject matter. Just always invite yourself to meetings that you weren't invited to. Right. I mean, you'll learn something all the time. Just show up and be hungry to continue to learn.
Yeah, that's a great point. Anything, John?
I would like to use something that you put in the book is to learn how to discipline yourself, focus on your mission, and people need to understand their mission is based on the vision that you have for your organization, and they need to walk the same path and make sure we do things without excuses. Yeah. You put that in your book in the page 17. If anybody want to look at it, upper right corner of that page.
He's going to be my.
The importance is we may not be able to accomplish everything, but we need to learn to stop making excuses for those things that we don't do because we neglect to do it. Yeah. Sometimes we fail because we went to fail, because we don't put enough effort, we don't put enough dedication, or we don't have the discipline to do it. And as somebody say, sometimes, accomplishment or discipline start just with doing my best in the morning. I accomplished something in the morning. And we need to look at it. What is holding me for making things happen, for getting to the next level? And asking for help is nothing wrong with that, So the tools are there. The leaders are there. They thank you. We love you. I respect you. And, I appreciate you taking, in consideration to invite me to this interview.
Absolutely. Look, pleasure is all mine, man. I love all you guys. Like Steve said too, I learned a lot from each of you in different ways, all kinds of different ways. So I appreciate all of your hard work, I love looking at how all the success that all of us have had, no matter the ups and downs. I've had more downs, or I've had some ups and downs more than me. Well, probably me and John, right? Steve had ups and downs. That's right. George.
Another podcast completely.
We could talk a whole podcast.
Yeah, that'd be a whole different podcast. But we've had a lot of ups and downs in career, in family life, all that, and we've all come through it on the other side, and we're all prospering at it. And it goes to show how great people you are. I mean, really, it has nothing to do with about money. It's about just family. Like I always say, you could judge a great family by their kids, or a great parent, right? How their kids present themselves. And I've always been impressed with all of your kids, right? So that says a lot about each of you, I think, more than anything. But ultimately, thank each of you for coming, for sure. Who brought it up? I think John was bringing it up about excuses. Erin, I'm surprised she hasn't jumped back in here to say that I have a saying about, we don't want excuses. We just need results, so, and I don't mean it like selling a house, I mean it like, hey, look, did you call the guy, and if so, well, he didn't answer. Okay. So what are you doing now? What are we going to do? You can't give up on it, right? You're just, right. So, there's got to be some kind of result there. Either it tells you to, go pound sand, or they want to list it, or they want to do this, or they want to accept the offer. We got to figure that out. So get the end result versus an excuse. Well, he didn't answer, or he didn't respond. Right. So, I could have had Jimmy Stewart on this one too. Do you guys know Jimmy Stewart, James Stewart, CID agent? Steve, you know him?
Yeah.
John, you don't know? I thought you would know him because he just chimed in. He just put great stuff. But I could have had Jimmy on this one too. But he was at Fort Bragg for a while as an agent too, right?
When you were at W1, no.
No, actually, he was there before me when I deployed.
Yeah,
What's that, Steve?
he was the ASAC, wasn't he?
Oh, now
Brian Stewart.
I know Mr. Stewart.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
We know Brian Stewart.
Stewart.
Yeah.
Jimmy Stewart was an agent there. He was an enlisted agent, and he was a probie then. So Steve may have been an intern just coming in at that point. I don't know. May have missed him, but yeah, he would have been good on here too. He deployed with me to Iraq. We were in that Iraq group, so but it was good. Yeah, Brittany says it was wonderful seeing all of you.
It was.
That's my wife, but it's always great to see you guys. Hell, I'll just do these podcasts just to see you and talk to you over and over. I don't care. But look, thank you guys for taking the time out. And look, be prepared. I'm probably going to have us do it again, and maybe we'll get some more guys. Maybe I'll get Serrano out of bed and get him to get in here, and then get some other. Maybe Jimmy will get him in here, and we'll talk about some other good stuff. But I appreciate each of you, friendship, work-wise. Great job. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep being leaders, pushing through. So you guys got anything else before we go?
That's it, brother. Let's do it again.
Let's do it again. Yes.
That book, Dave. Just need a copy of that book.
Yeah. I'm gonna ping you.
Look, it's hard times, man. I need to sell books.
Yeah, Steve.
Yeah. John bought it. Yeah. John's like,
Oh man. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
all
right.
right. All right. Well, I'll let you guys go. Hey, Steve, be safe, man, over there, and teach them guys all the good stuff. I know you know what you're doing, and these school shootings and craziness is just crazy, man. I'm telling you. Yeah. So we got to train law enforcement, train the teachers, maybe. I don't know. Whole different topic. We don't want to get into that. George is like, no. He's over there like, cut it. All right. Well, I'll see you guys later. Thank you guys again. We will talk later.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Guys.